Welcome back, book lovers, to another episode of Dragons and Spaceships, the show where we explore stories that challenge, comfort, and change us. I'm your host, Brandi, and today we are diving into a novel that feels both mythic and intimate, brutal and beautiful all at once. Our feature this week is The Knight and the Moth by Rachel Gillig, a haunting, lyrical exploration of loss, rage, womanhood, and survival. It's a story about a woman navigating the violence and silences of her world and what it means to rebuild when the old rules no longer protect you. Gillig's prose is raw yet poetic, blending realism with dreamlike moments of symbolism. It is the kind of book that lingers, one that asks more questions than it answers, and trusts the readers to feel their way through the darkness. But before we descend into Gillig's haunting world, let's take a moment to talk about something a little more grounded, a story that is just as emotional but rooted in the quiet complexities of everyday love. It's Normal People by Sally Rooney, a quiet, emotional powerhouse that explores love, class, and the complicated ways two people can change each other over time. The story follows Marianne and Connell, two Irish teens who seem to live in separate worlds. She's isolated and misunderstood. He's popular but insecure. When their paths intertwine, it sparks a relationship that is messy, intimate, and painfully real. Over the years, they fall in and out of each other's lives, navigating friendship, desire, and the emotional distance that grows between them. Rooney writes with surgical precision. Every silence, every misunderstanding, every glance feels loaded. Normal People isn't about grand romance. It's about the quiet ways we love and hurt each other, and how some people leave fingerprints on our lives that really never fade. If The Knight and the Moth is about surviving the wounds of the world, Normal People is about surviving wounds we give each other. So go check it out. All right, here we go. The Knight and the Moth begins in a world that feels familiar, but not entirely safe, a landscape shaped by trauma, war, and the weight of memory. At the center is a woman simply known as the Woman, navigating a post-industrial, post-conflict society that seems to have forgotten how to care for its own. The setting feels both grounded and mythic, evoking the desolation of a world that's still reeling from violence, one where cruelty has become ordinary and tenderness is an act of rebellion. Gillig writes with a kind of quiet fury. Every description feels loaded with grief and beauty. The world she builds is one where survival isn't just about enduring the physical, it's about holding on to your humanity when the world keeps trying to strip it away. At the heart of this novel is the woman, unnamed, unmoored, and unforgettable. She's a character shaped by loss, by the absence of care, by a lifetime of being told to be smaller, quieter, and safer. But through Gillig's lens, she becomes something fierce, someone who redefines power not through control, but through endurance. The Knight and the Moth are not just symbols, but extensions of her identity. The Knight representing protection, suppression, and the rigid expectations of the world around her, while the Moth embodies transformation, fragility, and the pull toward the light. Around her orbit men who are both familiar and distant, fathers, lovers, strangers, each embodying a different kind of power and danger. These relationships feel less like plot devices and more like emotional landscapes, illustrating how women are often forced to build meaning in spaces that deny their voices. And yet, through every wound and silence, the woman evolves. She moves submission to defiance, from invisibility to presence. It's not a triumphant art, it's messy, painful, and real. What makes The Knight and the Moth so powerful is how it examines womanhood in the aftermath of violence, both personal and societal. It's about how pain gets passed down and how women carry not just their own stories, but the silent stories of others. Gillig doesn't romanticize suffering, she confronts it. She asks what survival really looks like when you're rebuilding from ashes instead of starting fresh. There's a strong thread of rebirth throughout the book, the idea that breaking down can be its own form of creation. The moth becomes a reoccurring image of transformation, drawn to light, fragile but persistent. It reminds us that vulnerability isn't weakness, it is the act of staying open in a world that wants you hardened. In many ways, this is a story about reclaiming narrative, about women refusing to be side characters in their own stories, even when the world insists otherwise. Rachel Gillig writes like she's cutting words from her own skin, raw, deliberate, and searingly emotional. Her prose is almost tactical, sharp enough to wound, yet so beautifully constructed you can't look away. There's an echo of writers like Margaret Atwood and Max Porter here, a blend of the mythic and the mundane, the poetic and the political. Gillig doesn't just give you comfort, she gives you clarity. Every paragraph feels intentional, every silence, every repetition, every fragment. It mirrors a style of trauma itself, disjointed but always reaching toward truth. It's not an easy read, but the kind that stays with you, like a bruise that reminds you of both pain and survival. So, listeners, what do you think defines survival? Is it endurance, transformation, or the ability to feel when the world goes numb? The Knight and the Moth challenges us to rethink strength, to see beauty not as perfection, but persistence. But after something this emotionally heavy, I think we all deserve a story with a little warmth and a touch of magic. So let's shift gears to this week's Dragon's Roar. Coming December 9th, 2025, The Time Hop Coffee Shop by Phaedra Patrick is brewing up excitement among readers. Greta Parks, once the smiling star of Maple Gold coffee ads, stumbles into a magical cafe and wishes herself into Mapleville, the glossy, perfect world from her commercials. At first, it's everything she thought it was: sunshine, second chances, and a life that always hits the mark. But perfection has a price, and Greta has to choose between a scripted dream and the imperfect, irreplaceable mess of a real life. Cozy, charming, and full of heart, this is a second chance story with a magical twist. So if you're looking for a book that warms your soul while still making you think about the roads not taken, The Time Hop Coffee Shop deserves a spot on your TBR this December. It's equal parts romance, magic, and reflection, and honestly, it sounds like the perfect read for curling up on a rainy day. The Knight and the Moth isn't just a novel, it's an experience. It's a grief, grace, and fully all bound together in a poetic defiance. If you're looking for something that cuts deep but still glimmers with light, this one you won't forget. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Dragons and Spaceships. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and tag us with your favorite quotes from today's read. Until next time, keep reading, stay curious, and remember, even in the quietest moments, your story still matters. And may your TBR pile never stop growing.